Now this is Bernie Madoff from the Predatory Lending Network out with the news that it is reported now that there is $80 billion in healthcare fraud this year. What do you think of this, Harley?
Mr. J already took over $100 billion. I don't know why they're so worried.
Now in Ohio, there was a doctor, Henry Prasad, was sentenced to 20 years in jail for fraud and putting on. Now in Ohio, Dr. Henry Prasad was sentenced to 20 years in jail for fraud and performing unnecessary procedures and putting profits
ahead of patients.
Ohio Dr. Henry Prasad was sentenced to 20 years in jail for fraud for performing unnecessary procedures and putting profits ahead of patients. What do you make of this, Harley?
As a doctor myself, I know you should never put your profits ahead of your patients. I put my patients so far ahead I fell in love with one, and look where we are now.
Now the FBI is dependent on doctors being honest in their billing practices and is only able to catch the biggest offenders. Because this, Now the FBI is dependent on doctors being honest in their billing process and is only able to catch the biggest offenders. Because this, what can be done to better catch these doctors?
Well, obviously I wasn't a very good one, so I'm not sure I can talk.
Now how can we protect people Now how can we protect oneself from Medicare fraud?
Just say no.
So in closing, this is Bernie Madoff from the Predatory Lending Network saying, I'm having me a new cellmate, so watch your butt. Now this is Bernie Madoff from the Predatory Lender Network out with the news that there's an estimated $80 billion in healthcare fraud this year. What do you think of that, Joker?
Ooh, anything has to do with fraud, I'm all for it.
Now Friday, there was an Ohio doctor, Henry Prasad, was sentenced to 20 years in jail for fraud for performing unnecessary procedures and putting profits ahead of patients. What do you make of that?
Unnecessary procedure? There's no such thing as an unnecessary procedure. Sounds like everything I'm looking for in a doctor. It's your time. You're supposed to talk now. Okay, go right ahead. Don't let me stop you.
Now the FBI is dependent on doctors being honest in their billing process and is only able to catch the biggest offenders. Because of this, what can be done to better check doctors?
Nothing, just go to the little guy.
Now how can people protect themselves from Medicare fraud?
Yo, Medicare, don't get old. I'll take care of that. Oh, are we done here?
Is there any last minute things you'd like to say?
Oh, stay in school, kids. Be a doctor.
So in closing, this is Bernie Madoff saying I'm getting a new prison inmate, so watch your butt. Now this is Bernie Madoff from the Predatory Lending Network out with the news that there's an estimated $80 billion in healthcare fraud each year. What do you think of this, sir?
I think, well, you see, there's other doctors, like you said. Sometimes, I guess the economy is also so bad that they try to do any fraud as possible to get that much of payments, because there's other people with no insurance that they don't pay at all. So they're trying to fraud other people that do have it by making unnecessary procedures. And well, the thing is that sometimes it's also the guy's fault, because you have to also get second opinions, even three opinions to see what you really have, instead of just going to a doctor and then they're making procedures that you don't really need. Also, it's also the insurance's fault that once they get that unnecessary amount of money being charged, they have to do some investigation to see what's really happening.
Now, an Ohio doctor, Henry Prasad, was sentenced to 20 years in jail for fraud for performing unnecessary procedures and putting profits ahead of patients. What do you think of that, sir?
I think that's fair enough. I mean, 20 years might be a little short for all that money, because that's $80 billion. That's a lot of money for only 20 years to do in jail.
Now, the FBI is dependent on doctors being honest in their billing practice and is only able to catch the biggest offenders. Because of this, what can be done to better check doctors?
I think they have to be, I don't know, they.
Okay, I'll get that. How can people protect themselves from Medicare fraud?
Once again, you have to get to second opinions, even 3 opinions before going just to one doctor before doing anything else, like they said. I've gone to other places when they tell me like I have such a bad thing in health, and then when I go to another doctor, they tell me something else. So just try to be more careful with people like that, especially if they look shady, you know. Use common sense.
So in closing, is there any last minute things you'd like to say?
No.
So this is Bernie Madoff saying, I'm getting me a new cellmate, so watch your butt. This is Bernie Madoff from the Predatory Lending Network, out with the news that there's an estimated $80 billion in healthcare fraud each year. What do you think of that?
I ain't got nothing to do with the healthcare. $80 billion every year? I don't know who controls that. I don't.
Now, in Ohio, there was a doctor, Henry Prasad, was sentenced to 20 years in jail for fraud for performing unnecessary medical procedures and putting profits ahead of patients. What do you think of this?
What kind of unnecessary procedures are we talking about?
Blood statins, drugs that the people don't need,
Well, why don't they need them? Like, what do they do? We find out what they do. What do they need? Well, they just like cutting limbs off and put them in other places, or what?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm for it. Why not? We've got to shake things up. It's evolution. Come on. Sorry about
No, I mean, you're kind of, I gotta make sure that. Okay, the FBI is dependent on doctors being honest in their billing process and is only able to catch the biggest offenders because of this. What can be done to better check doctors?
You tell me, man. You tell me. I've been trying to figure that one out forever. What can be done to better check doctors? I don't know. Maybe they need to be bent over and something stuck up in there as well. I don't know.
Now, how can people protect themselves from Medicare fraud?
Man, work out, eat your meals all the time, exercise regularly. That's what you could do. Stay out of the doctor office.
So in closing, do you have any last minute things to say?
I ain't got nothing for you.
So in closing, this is Bernie Madoff saying, I'm getting me a new cellmate, so watch your butt.